Skeleton Crew. For this one, I'm pretty excited for as well. When I first heard about it, I didn't really know too much about it. At first, I thought it was going to be this disparate band of rebels going from place to place to place, on these different missions and stuff. But actually going into it, like apparently it's going to be more of like 4 11 to 12-year-olds who are kind of lost in space, and this 30 to 40-year-old character, which Jude Law will play, he'll meet up with them, and they'll go on this adventure together and everything, which I thought it was pretty cool. I was doing research into it, and now John Watts and Christopher Ford are going to be at the helm of it, and they said that they talked to Kathleen Kennedy that they kind of wanted to be like kind of like an 80s Amblin coming of age adventure story, kind of like the Goonies in space, which I thought was like really cool, kind of like a different spin on Star Wars where it's all about the wars and everything. Apparently the fake production title was like based on like an episode of The Simpsons where like Bart Simpson and his friends have like these fake IDs, and like they kind of go on this road trip and things go wrong. So I can totally see that happening with this show, because John Watts, like one of his movies, I haven't seen it, but it's called Cop Car. It's about these 2 teenagers who steal a cop car, and then Kevin Bacon, who's the cop, is after them. So it can kind of be like in that vein. I'm not really sure how much it'll tie in, because apparently this is supposed to tie in with Mandalorian and Ahsoka, but since it takes place in that kind of Mandalorian Ahsoka time, I'm hoping that we kind of get more of the post Return of the Jedi Reconstruction era, as we kind of saw with the Mandalorian, like now with the Empire gone and like the rebellion kind of trying to reform the galaxy. So it's kind of like the Wild West. So obviously Mando is like the gunslinger character, going into the bars and shooting people up and getting his bounty and stuff. So when we kind of explore more of that, maybe these 4 young characters are kind of like on the fringes of society. Maybe they ran away from home or something. They're kind of rebels themselves, not necessarily with the Alliance, but they're kind of like these rebellious kids. Maybe they steal an Imperial ship or something, and they kind of get lost in space, and then like Jude Law's character goes after them because the Imperials are obviously after these 4 kids. So it can kind of be like a fun adventure story. Maybe they're after some kind of pirate treasure, kind of like in the Goonies, since that's what John Watts was inspired by to make this story. So yeah, I think it can be like a fun story. Then maybe like as the show goes on, it can kind of become more dark and more mature, and these characters can meet up with Mando. It's kind of open the door for like a bigger war going on. Maybe like the Empire is slowly but surely building themselves up. These characters can go from being people who like run away from the fight to being brought into the fight, kind of like Mando was, where first he was in it for himself, and then obviously Grogu came into his life, and then he became like selfless, and then he eventually realized that I can't be on the run. I really need to join this fight, get this kid with Luke Skywalker, kind of have that be the journey. And then now that we got those episodes with Book of Boba Fett, Mando and Grogu are kind of like a clan of 2, and now with like Greef Karga and all these other characters kind of bring him into this bigger fight with the Empire and everything. These Skeleton Crew characters can kind of be involved in all that. So I'm hoping that's kind of like the epic crossover event that we get that Kathleen Kennedy was hinting at later on. So we'll see. Obviously all this is speculation. We're not really confirmed about anything at this point. Maybe it won't be as tied in with these characters, but I'm hoping it will. So we'll see how that goes. So for Skeleton Crew, Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert, aka the Daniels, who directed Swiss Army Man and Everything Everywhere All at Once, are pegged to direct an episode of Skeleton Crew, which I'm actually really excited for because I loved both those movies. So yeah, I'm hoping that they kind of bring that kind of weird, crazy, interesting, heartfelt, hilarious style to one of the episodes, which I think is totally fine, just because John Watts and Christopher Ford are known for like comedy, weird, oddball humor and all that. They did Clown and Cop Car, which I haven't seen, which I explained in the video, but I loved Spider-Man Home trilogy, so there's a lot of like humor and heart in that. So I'm hoping that they bring that more into the Skeleton Crew series, especially with the Daniels on board. I think it can be really good. So yeah, I'm hoping that they make something great. So yeah, we'll see. A director named David Lowery is actually going to be directing an episode as well, and he did a lot of stuff like Peach Dragon and Peter Pan and Wendy. He also directed like Ghost Story and Green Knight, and just based on his tone, he's kind of like in that fantasy realm, like children discovering some kind of like fantasy, or he's very like visual. He has a lot of like fantastical elements within his stories. So I'm guessing that he'll bring a lot of that to Skeleton Crew, especially since the premise is a bunch of kids exploring the galaxy and stuff like that. So yeah, I really think he'll bring that kind of Goonies vibe. Maybe he'll have some more of like the serious episodes, just based on like Peach Dragon, the tone they set with that one. So yeah, maybe he'll start like more like comedic and then kind of slowly become more mature with David's episode. So we'll see what happens. We also got confirmation on a couple of directors that'll be directing a couple of the episodes. There's Jake Schreier, and he directed a movie called The Robot and Frank, which I haven't seen, but just from clips I've seen, it looks like with his episode, he'll have like a very sci-fi, endearing kind of like character moments and everything like that. So I think that could be really good. Bryce Dallas Howard and Lee Isaac Chung are actually going to be directors as well, and they directed a couple episodes of The Mandalorian. Bryce Dallas Howard directed one of the Mandalorian episodes that weren't really that good, episode 6. But other than that, she's directed some really, really good episodes of Mandalorian. But yeah, I'm excited that they're bringing on these different filmmakers for Skeleton Crew, and yeah, it just gets me more more excited for it. We've also got some updates with the casting. Apparently Jude Law is going to be playing some kind of Jedi. We also got confirmation on the actors for the kid characters. The first one is Ravi Cabot-Conyers. The next one is Kiriana Crater. And the last one is Robert Timothy Smith. We also got confirmation on the fourth child character. His name is Ryan Kira Armstrong. We also got confirmation on the two adult characters. One is Tunde Ndebimpe, and the next one is Carrie Condon. And I'm assuming that they'll probably be like the parent characters. So for Skeleton Crew, there's been a couple updates. The biggest update is that Jaleel White's actually been confirmed to be in the series, and he said he's going to be playing some kind of pirate. So that'd be really interesting to see. Apparently there's a trailer that dropped at Star Wars Celebration, and there's been some descriptions of it, and it definitely seems like it'll be Goonies in space, where the kids are on this planet where it's kind of described as suburban, and they go off on this adventure, and the parents return, and they say that the kids are missing. So it looks like they're going to meet up with Jude Law's character, who reveals himself to be a Jedi, and he's probably going to be like protecting them as they're kind of like lost in space. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, it looks like it'll be some kind of like fun space adventure, lost in space type show, so I think it could be really good. So we've actually got quite a bit of updates for Skeleton Crew. Got a first official trailer and a first official poster that was released at the D23 convention back in August, and yeah, both of them look great. Starting off with the poster, yeah, it definitely has that Goonies vibe that John Watson and Christopher Ford were talking about, you know, way back in the day, with like the kids and they're discovering this spaceship and they're about to go on this adventure. So yeah, it looks really cool. Definitely very Amblin vibe, very like 80s nostalgia vibes going on. And yeah, you know, that brings us right into the trailer itself. I really love the trailer. You know, like I said before, you know, it definitely gives those 80s Goonies Amblin Entertainment vibes. You know, I really love these characters, you know, like Wim and all of his friends and everything look really, really fun. Yeah, definitely reminds me of like Mikey from the Goonies, you know, him always like wanting to go on adventures and everything like that, and having this kind of like overactive imagination, and his friends being kind of like, you're kind of weird, but okay, I'll go along with it. And then, you know, eventually, you know, them finding the Lost Jedi Temple, which ends up being, you know, Fane's pirate ship, and then being launched out into space and going on this grand adventure. So yeah, it just looks really cool. You know, I don't really think there'll be too many tie-ins to the overall Star Wars saga. And like I was saying earlier, I'm not quite sure how it's going to tie into, you know, Mandalorian and Ahsoka and Boba Fett, you know, with this whole crossover event. But yeah, you know, this was just a first teaser trailer, so, you know, we don't know the full story. You know, hopefully sometime in the next couple weeks we'll get a new trailer just with like a little bit more information, a little bit more character moments, and a little bit more maybe crossovers here and there. Hey, Gemini, Lucasfilm just dropped a new trailer for Skeleton Crew, and yeah, it actually looks really, really cool. It really sets the tone of that 80s vibe that they're really going for, especially with the kind of Star Wars version of Major Tom. I think that was really interesting. When I first heard the beat, I was like, wait, this sounds familiar, and then they started singing like the lyrics for Major Tom, but in like a Star Wars language, so I thought that was really funny. But yeah, I really like the trailer. It really looks more like upbeat and more fun. You know, you really get a sense of who the characters are, and, you know, their different personalities, and how they're all going to kind of gel together, and how they kind of have a little bit of a rebellious spirit, you know, kind of like I was saying like way earlier in the video when I was recording that like years ago, where I thought that they'd be kind of like rebels themselves, and it looks like, yeah, they are pretty rebellious in general. And yeah, we finally got confirmation on the parent characters, Tunde Onabimpe and Carrie Condon. But yeah, it looks really cool, looks very action-packed. Get the dynamic between John Norwood and the rest of the kids, and we see like how they all kind of meet up with each other, you know, how the kids are kind of wrapped up in this adventure, and then they kind of, you know, blast off into space, and they go to this kind of like seedy space bar, and then Wim has those little kind of Gold Republic credits, and then, you know, the patrons are getting all suspicious, and then, you know, all heck breaks loose, and then Jod, you know, rescues the kids, and then they kind of go off on this adventure. And then, you know, we get more of SM33, you know, voiced by Nick Frost, you know, this really crazy pirate voice. We get clips of Jaleel White as Gunter, the pirate characters. So yeah, it just looks like a really cool, fun, swashbuckling Goonies in space adventure story. So yeah, I'm definitely really excited for it. But yeah, overall looks really cool, really fun, and I'm definitely looking forward to it. But I think overall, maybe like the creators are just wanting it to be just like a self-contained story. Maybe there'll be like a tie-in at the very end. You know, this is like a Lost in Space type story with these kids, and, you know, go on this adventure with Jude Law. And I'm sure there's gonna be like more with Jude Law's character as well. You know, Wim was saying like, oh my gosh, you're a Jedi, but, you know, I don't necessarily think he is. I know he's a Force user, but I'm sure there's gonna be like some kind of like shadiness with him and everything like that. And I'm sure like there'll be some kind of redemption for his character, and then, you know, he'll eventually join the fight with Mando and Ahsoka in the whole, you know, Thrawn movie coming up. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. And speaking of which, there was an interview that happened a couple months ago with Jude Law, kind of describing the character of John Norwood, how he's really more just like a quick thinker, and, you know, he kind of uses his charm to get out of situations. So yeah, I'm sure he's going to be kind of like a Jack Sparrow type character, you know, with these kids on this adventure, you know, very much like Peter Pan, like getting the kids in and out of these different situations, getting them into trouble with the pirate gang and everything like that. And, you know, again, speaking of which, we got more casting announcements with different different actors for these different characters that they're going to be playing. It was confirmed that Nick Frost is actually going to be playing the character of SM33, kind of like the droid version of Smee, and I'm sure like SM33 is supposed to be a reference to Smee, like SMEE with his name, so I think that's really fun. And, he's going to be kind of like the first mate character for the kids, and I'm sure, the captain of the ship Parrish, we saw that shot in the trailer of like the skeleton, kind of cranking its head like that towards the camera, so I'm sure that was the captain. And then SM33 is like his, second in command, and then kind of helps these kids like as they're on their adventure going against these pirates. And yeah, speaking of the pirates, we got confirmation that Fred Tatasciore is going to be playing a character called Brutus, Mike Estes will be playing a character named Pax, and Dale Soulis will be playing a character called Chilt. And it was also confirmed that the ship that the kids steal is actually called the Onyx Cinder. So I think that's a really cool name. But yeah, overall, it just looks like it's going to be like a really cool story. Looks like there's going to be a lot of fun action, a lot of like space battles and like different monsters and different fights that the kids are going to be involved in. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. Again, like I'm hoping that it kind of ties into the overall Star Wars saga, but if it's just a self-contained story and has maybe like a little teaser at the end that sets up the Thrawn movie later on, then I'll be fine with that. Kind of like what I was saying earlier, I think Disney needs to move away from the Skywalker saga and just do self-contained stories that just have to do with like just really good characters and just a really good story. And just based on the shots in this trailer, it just looks like it's really like well made and just like a love letter to all those 80s nostalgic Amblin style movies, the suburb shot and kids using the flashlights and everything in the dark caves. Looks like they really paid attention to those details of that movie. So yeah, I think it could be really, really cool. And also Jude Law was saying that the kids are in a constant state of confusion, jeopardy, and challenge. So I think that can really tie into his character of like getting them in and out of situations, and that I'm sure like his character Jod is probably just wanting the pirate ship find the captain's like lost treasure or something like that. The kids are kind of like an obstacle, but then they have to like work together to find this treasure because he doesn't want to get rid of these kids because they're kids. He's not going to just shoot them off in space. I'm sure he's going to be like one of those kind of like hard-edged characters at first, but he has a heart of gold. And as the story goes on, he learns to care about the kids and gets them out of different situations and things like that. So yeah, I think it could be just like like a classic pirate story where the main guy has to get paired up with these kids, and then they kind of change each other for the better. Kids kind of grow in confidence and learn about the world and life lessons, and then the hard-edged main character pirate finally softens up and learns to care about the kids. So yeah, I think it could be a really cool dynamic and really good fun family story for sure. Another really fun fact is that the creators John Watts and Christopher Ford used a lot of old and new technology. Obviously they used like the new technology with the stagecraft backgrounds and everything like that, and the CGI effects for the ships and planets and creatures and stuff like that. But apparently they also reached out to Phil Tippett, who was a stop motion animator back in the day during the original trilogy, and they used a lot of stop motion and matte painting, like they used back in the day in the original Star Wars trilogy. So I think that's really cool. There's like a really cool documentary on Disney Plus called Light and Magic that talks about the making of the original Star Wars trilogy and how Phil Tippett was head of stop motion animation and puppetry and all the costumes and stuff like that for the alien creatures, and how slowly but surely they started to use more like CGI, and that they didn't really utilize like the old school techniques, so he kind of felt casted out of ILM in a way. So yeah, I felt really bad for him. So I'm really glad that John Watts and Christopher Ford are bringing him back into Lucasfilm and continuing on his legacy of stop motion and matte painting and stuff like that. So I think that can really be cool. Again, throwing it back to like those original like 80s movies where they use stop motion and matte painting and stuff like that, just to increase the production value. So I think it could be a really cool balance of like old and new. So I'm really glad that they kind of utilized his talents in that way. And then the only other update is that Mick Giacchino has been confirmed to do the music for Skeleton Crew. And I'm not too familiar with his work, but I know that he's the son of Michael Giacchino, and that Michael Giacchino already did the music for Star Wars Project with Rogue One, and that he's already worked with John Watts on the Spider-Man Home trilogy movies. So I think that's a really cool connection that he has to the project. But yeah, hopefully he can follow in his father's footsteps and pays homage to John Williams' original score. Because I was reading reviews that he grew up watching Star Wars with his dad and the rest of his family, and then his dad would have a really big influence on how he should listen to the scores of the movies, especially with John Williams being such a genius. It's really easy to kind of pick up on all those traits, especially watching that documentary on Disney Plus, The Music by John Williams. You can definitely see how inspirational he was to future composers. I'm sure that Mick Giacchino was definitely one of them. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to his themes, and yeah, I think he could really make something great. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.